it's always weird for me to actually start a podcast because I don't really know how to start it. So it's always weird. But Jenny, thank you so much for joining the podcast. Thank you for joining. Can you tell us a little bit about your role, current role right now, and just tell us about your role right now.
Sure. So I am a middle school dean. I also teach three actually right now. This year, three, but normally two middle school classes. I teach Spanish. So I have currently two seventh grade classes and one eighth grade class. Yeah. And I love middle school. I think it's the funnest, it's the
Yeah,
funnest age group to work with.
yeah,
It's never boring, never the same day.
that's right.
So I just really enjoy it. But I think those of us that love middle school, like you love it or hate it. I think that's generally the reaction I get from people. It's like, oh, middle school.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, you must be very, like that whole kind of vibe. And I don't know. So I love the age.
Yeah, I feel like it takes a special person to actually be a middle school teacher or just work in middle school in general.
Mhm.
I love middle school. I miss middle school. Right now, I'm at an elementary school. It's a TK through sixth grade, but I just miss that. I don't know. It feels like it's alive. Like middle
Yeah.
school is alive. There's always something going on. There's always, it's vibrant.
Hmm.
Um, and there's always these kids are always in need. They always need help. And so, that's why I like middle school. I taught middle school for 6 years and I was a dean for 3 at a middle school. So,
Hmm.
that's why I like middle school.
Yeah, they're
But
fun.
yeah. So, I mean, being a dean, tell us what is a day in a life as a dean at the school you work at?
It's some days are easy. I'm not gonna lie. Some days, I have time to do some of my administrative duties. Part of my responsibility is also following up on attendance for my grade. My kids.
Mm,
Other times it's just fall. I mean, honestly, if you're a dean or a counselor, you know that some of it is just making sure you have the time to go talk to Timmy and check on Sandy, and because you had
yeah,
a conversation the day before or a few days ago, or you heard from a teacher that they seemed a little off. So, on a good day, I have a lot of time to walk around and connect and check up
yeah,
on the kids and see how they're doing and how was your weekend, that kind of conversation. Other days, it could be a lot. It could be, kids in my office because I don't know, the teachers are kind of out of their patience with them. And
mm,
suddenly there's a lot of kids coming through in and out. Other times it's social emotional. There's those
yeah,
times of the year where friendships are shifting. The middle school relationship, it kind of falls apart. Um, so, typically I get there early. I always get there early. I call it the calm before the storm,
yeah.
and so I'm a person that I need a little moment to set up my day,
That's right.
see what I need to do, and I can't, I have colleagues who arrive at 8:20. We start at 8:30. So they get there like 8:20, 8:25. And I'm like, how do you do this?
Mm-mm.
So I get there early. That helps me set up myself and my day. You know, on a day where typical teacher things sometimes, make copies, make sure my lesson plan is good. What am I doing today? And then there's just making sure I make my list of what I have to do. So, okay, today I have to make sure these kids know they have detention this week. And I need to, okay, Sandy had, that issue yesterday with Mr. Smith. Let me go see how she's doing, how she's feeling about going to class today, making sure
Yeah,
there's that, safety net. Or again, I heard so and so's going through a tough time. Let me just say hi. I don't need to go digging. I need to assess myself, right? And it's like,
yeah,
hey, how you doing? How's it going? Is your day okay? So there's a lot of connection for me. For me, what you talk about is the relationships, the building of the relationships is
mhm,
crucial for what I do. If they don't trust me, if I don't have a rapport with them, then it's going to be really hard for me to be able to help them to get to the bottom of why their action occurred. Because I always say it's never really what happened. There's something underneath that created a kid to act out or,
yeah,
not listen or whatever it happened to be that day.
yeah.
Mhm.
Can you take us through a conversation with a student? Like, how would that look like? Let's say I'm in the classroom
Mhm.
and I'm just, and I'm not having it and I'm acting up and I'm being disrespectful and I might have cursed out the teacher. I might
Uh-huh.
have thrown something. And now that's thrown on your plate. They got sent down to
Sure.
the office, they went to the dean's
Sure.
office.
Sure.
What would a conversation be like with you?
I assess the situation. Does the kid need a moment? Does
Yeah.
he need a moment, first of all, or she? Do they
Mhm.
need a moment? If I feel based on what hey, come on in, sit down, calm down, what's going on? Take a
Yeah.
breath, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Take your time. I'm here. Just whatever you need. Um, and so then, once we can open that conversation, I listen. I went to public school. Obviously, I'm a human. I'm an adult. I've had bad days. Even as a teacher, I had a pretty non-stellar moment in my career with a group of kids, right? A class. And so sometimes I don't necessarily, not that I don't, obviously I don't say this to the student I don't like, but I want to hear from their perspective what
Yeah.
happened. And I think that's really important for the child to feel that someone is willing to hear them out, because maybe they don't usually get that at home, or because they feel like maybe with this particular teacher, they never get that opportunity.
Yeah.
I always want to go, what happened? Just tell me your side of the story, basically. And, if sometimes, to be honest, sometimes there are some overreactions to a situation. The teacher's having a bad day. Maybe they were the third kid that they had a issue with, and it just escalated because the personalities are just
Yeah.
doing this.
Absolutely.
I will, talk to the student. Here's what happened. Here's what went wrong. Here's how you could have done this differently, right? Another, if the kid is really out of place, then they're out of place. And that's another opportunity to be like, look, you understand that what you did was not okay, right? And if they, generally kids are pretty bright and aware. They're like, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
how could we have done this differently? What do you think that created in the classroom for your teacher and your classmates, right? Like, we're
Yeah.
there to learn science, right? So now what do you think's happening? Oh, I took time, I took attention from the class, and now we're
Yeah.
maybe a little behind, right? And he's trying to review for a test. So like, now you're not going to be ready for this test because he's not going to move it, and trying to have them understand that there's consequences to our actions, good and bad, right? And
Yeah.
so, you know, I personally am not, and this could be debated. Not maybe not many people might agree with this, but I don't force kids to apologize. I
Yeah.
think most of us can smell a fake apology,
Oh,
a
yeah.
mile away. Elementary school, I remember being, I was a camp counselor, and people would be like, apologize. Kids like, sorry.
Yeah.
Like, not even look.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right.
So I always say, if you feel that you owe your teacher an apology, and you think that that could be helpful to your relationship with him or her, I really encourage you to do that. And if you don't think you can walk up and say it verbally, at least write them an email. We,
Yeah.
our middle school, high school, it's a middle school, high school campus.
Mhm.
We obviously, technology is big. And so they really communicate with us a lot via email. We communicate with them via email. And so I said, I know it's hard sometimes to say you're sorry verbally, seeing the person who you affected, but I think it would be really helpful for your relationship with your teacher that they understand you messed up and you're aware you messed up, and
Yeah.
that you are sorry about that. So I think it's really, I work with we don't call our admins principals, we call them directors in the private school world.
Okay.
So, I work with a director, a principal, that she and I have the same philosophy. Middle school kids are going to mess up.
Mhm.
And, obviously, if it's a huge situation, a fight, maybe there's drugs or alcohol kind of involved, like some kind of
Yeah.
big element, that's different. There's a different conversation, there's a different way we handle that. But when you're talking about these everyday relational, between peers and students and teachers,
Yeah.
even plagiarism, we don't necessarily immediately go to a negative consequence as much as like, let's talk, let's bring your parents in. How can we help you? Do you understand why this is wrong? Okay, you messed up. Now you know the expectation. We don't expect you to mess up the next time. Kind of,
Yeah.
and then, or rather, the next time you might mess up, there actually will be a more severe consequence, because when you get to high school, there won't be a pass, And
Yeah.
so, I really enjoy working with someone that has that belief. I think partly because I was a kid in middle school that messed up
Mhm.
a lot,
Yeah.
and it would have been very comforting to know that adults would have allowed for that space to happen, and
Do
not feel
you
like there was consequences all the time.
Yeah, do you feel like, the teachers at your school, push for harsh consequences? Are they pushing for harsh consequences? Like they're like, okay, the book needs to be thrown at this kid right here.
I think honestly, if anything, I think teachers at my school are like teachers anywhere. So I feel like if at your campus, you probably have a percentage of teachers that are like, throw the book at them. Why are they coming? I'm on social media, obviously, there's a lot of memes like they send them back with a snack,
That's
kind of thing.
right.
I
That's
mean, I have
right.
candy in my office, and so yeah, they send them back with a
That's
Reese's.
right.
But yeah, I think it's like any other teacher. I think there's teachers that don't understand. They want that
Mhm.
consequence. Throw the book at them.
Mhm.
Why are they still here? How come there's no detention or suspension? And I have other teachers that I think really understand where we're coming from. So I think it's like anywhere else. You're just going to have a group of people saying yes or no. I always just constantly remind people, hey man, it's not personal.
That's
We
right.
don't wake up in the morning. At least not. I don't really believe that most, if not any, of our students wake up in the morning going, "Today I'm going to make Mister So and So's life miserable." Like,
Right. No, I agree. I agree.
yeah,
And that snack thing, right? You always see those things like they come back with like a Gatorade and a bag of chips or whatever, right? That snack thing's a big thing. But you know what? I feel like for me, I have water. I have bottled waters in my office. I also have like sometimes I'll have little cutie oranges and I'll give them to
yeah,
I give them to my students. But I feel like it's a way to calm them down. Like
yeah.
if they're sitting there and hey, do you want to drink a water? Here, so I got a water for you. And they take the water and they drink it, and it's a way to calm them down. And once they're calmed down, they're at a state where they're regulated. They can actually talk about, here's what happened, um, and they can really process, what happened and how to make this situation better.
Right. I
You
mean,
know,
I am very lucky that I work at a place that affords me certain things. As someone that works in an independent school, I have a
mm,
beanbag chair in my office. I have a little couch that's the
nice.
perfect size for middle school students, your average middle school student at least.
Yeah,
And so, when they come in, where do you want to sit? That's off the bat. Just sit where you're going to be comfortable. Have a
yeah.
squishmallow they can smash around if they want to. I think, again, part of it is as a dean, as a counselor, as an administrator to some degree, you want them to feel like that they can come into your office and it's a safe space.
Hmm.
And it's interesting. I think a couple years ago, I had a situation where there was a discipline issue, and I was with the admin above me at the time, pretty much saying the same thing they were, right?
Yeah.
And the reaction by the kids or from the kids to that admin was very like, how dare they tell us this and da 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 da. And I was like, I honestly, I called a group of kids over at lunch because it was right before lunch, and I had them come up to a table. I'm like, help me understand. Like, I told you the exact same thing,
Yeah.
right? So why are you not react? And I was just really curious, like, why you're not reacting to me like that when I told you the exact same thing? It came from I was feeling kind of bad for them because I was like, oh, they're taking the heat. Basically, is how I felt, right?
Hmm.
And they were like, nah, but you get to know us. You make an effort to come out and hang out with us.
Right.
And that was for me the biggest. I mean, I feel like I was doing that all along, but it was like a definite like stamp of approval that what I'm doing is working, right?
Yeah.
That, I really try to, get out there and talk to them. And when I do have to discipline them, I think I've been very lucky so far. Not every kid, but I think most kids, um, I don't get too much pushback from them in the sense of like disrespect, right?
That's
I might
good.
get pushback because they feel it's not fair
Yeah.
and Timmy did it too and I didn't kind of thing, but like
Yeah.
I don't really get much disrespect or kids walking away from me or anything like that. But I think that's it. It's like you have to get to know them not just when they're in trouble, right? Or not
Yeah.
when they need the help. Maybe not even
That's
trouble,
right.
just not when they need the help. It's
Yeah.
just those everyday good morning, get to class, come on, you got this. Or
Yeah.
oh, you notice that, hey, you got a haircut, that kind of
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
things, right?
Yeah. I feel
Yeah,
like if every conversation is a conversation about discipline, then you're not going to be able to build a relationship with that student,
right,
right? Like
right.
every time you see a student, you're like, just talking about their behavior, talking about why they aren't doing something, talking about why they didn't show up to detention. They're never going to want to be around you at all.
No,
They're
they
going to
avoid you.
avoid you. Yeah, they're going to avoid you. They're not going to want to talk to you,
Hmm.
because they know that everything that comes out of your mouth is going to be something negative toward them. And
Right.
so
Right.
you do got to catch them on the good days. You do got
Mhm.
to compliment them. Hey, I like your shoes. Those are
Mhm.
cool shoes. I like your
Yeah.
jacket.
Yeah.
Even something silly like if you're walking up with a bag of chips, whatever. Hey, you want some chips? Yeah, you have
Mhm.
something. You want you
Mhm.
want some of this? And like just something where it's not about behavior.
Yeah.
Those
It's
little things that you can do, show up to a basketball game when they're playing.
um,
If they're playing football, ask to throw. Can I throw one? Can I throw one to you? Go for a pass. Throw that football. Play soccer. Right? Kick that ball.
right.
All those little things right there go such a long way. And it takes little effort. Like it's
Mhm.
just these little effort things, like just a little effort. Like it's not even a big thing. One
Right.
football throw, one. I'll
Right.
be goalie for 5 minutes. I'll stand here.
Mhm.
Like it's
Mhm.
not a big deal. And if
But
they
you
score,
yeah,
if they
I mean,
score
if you
on you,
think
so
about
what?
it,
It's not even a big deal.
right, let them score, it's fine,
Yeah.
or have them score for real, but, like, even as adults, right, I know I feel so good and so noticed and so appreciated when a colleague, friend from work walks in and they're like, "Hey man, you okay?" Or, "Hey, I got you a cookie," because maybe I didn't get a chance to get up to the staff lounge, and there was cookies galore or
Mhm.
whatever. And it's like, thanks, man. Like the fact that you thought about me, the fact that you're coming in from your walk to the cafeteria or to the bathroom and just be like, "Hey, what's up? How you doing?"
Yeah.
It's no different with the kids. I think a lot of teachers feel not appreciated. I listen. I'm a product of public school. I went. I'm from Boyle Heights, East LA.
Oh, really?
So
What you went to Roosevelt? Where'd you go? Garfield?
Garfield, yeah. I mean, I'm proud
Garfield.
of my Garfield prize. I went to
Yes,
public.
Garfield.
So so mad respect for that. But like, I
Yeah.
I understand the public school load is huge, and there's a lot of demand on the teachers, and I think at the same time on admin, and so it's really hard for everybody to get around and make everyone or help everyone feel noticed and appreciated. Because sometimes,
Mhm.
even at a private school, sometimes we have our meetings and we're like, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
The faculty meeting. This could have been an email, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But for me, I also try to remember, when is the last time we were all in a room together? And because everybody's so in their room, in their classroom, or in their grade levels or whatever, that it's kind of nice to come all together and be like, "Hey man, how you doing? I haven't seen you all week," maybe in that case,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
I think we need to appreciate sometimes those moments, maybe not what they're telling us, but those moments
Yeah.
we're all together, so that we can, you know, appreciate each other.
Sometimes I feel like we're all we have. Like we're all we have.
Mhm.
There's no in my little school that I work at, right? There's me, there's the principal. I'm the assistant principal, she's the principal, and then we have our teachers. They're like constant, always on campus. And you know what? That's all we have. And we have to have each other's back, right? And we have these students right here that we're in charge of. And,
Yeah,
and we need to make sure that these students, progress, that they get I don't know, smarter. We're helping them out. And we're all we have. That's it.
yep,
Because if we're looking to get help from anywhere else, like the district or anywhere else, anywhere, there's a bunch of red tape and you got to do all these things, all these hoops you got to jump through for help. And you know what? It's like we're all we have. And I don't think we understand that
right,
in public school.
right,
In a public school setting, I don't think we understand that. It's always like this division of like, okay, admin and teachers, and there's the students, and then there's the parents, and
mhm,
it's just all this division. And when we're divided, we're not good. We're not good
right.
divided.
No,
So
no,
I feel like we're all we have. Yeah,
100%. And I
yeah,
think, teachers in general, like, we understand. There's a certain person that goes into teaching, right? There's a certain
I would hope
person that
so.
goes
I would hope
into
so.
education and into that kind of service, and our schedules, our expectations, our demands that people place on us and that we place on ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, only really we get that, right? When I'm prepping on a weekend because I want to have my stuff ready for, and I listen, I'm kind of like pseudo admin. I teach 2 classes and I do have admin responsibilities, but like, I'm still teaching. And so I have to set up my week with my lessons. And for, again, my big kids, we put our homework online so that it's all accessible. There's no excuse,
Yeah.
And so I have to have all that stuff ready to go. And so prepping on a Sunday, for some of my friends that don't have a teaching job, they're like, "What do you mean you gotta prep?" I'm like, you don't understand. Like,
Yeah.
it's it's, everybody thinks our job is like a cush job because we get summers off, right? Or we have holidays or spring break, but
Hmm.
there's still work happening during that time.
Yeah.
And in some cases, I'm a 12-month contract. That's, getting paid for the 12 months. It's just, I decided to spread my paycheck for 12 months.
Yeah.
And I prep in the summer. If we have a new book that we're teaching from, I have to get used to that book and
Yes.
where am I starting? How are the lessons different, the same, or whatever? And people don't fully always understand that. They think we're just like kicking back, drinking margaritas for 3 months in the summer.
Yeah.
Not be the
No,
case.
that's not the case. When I was a classroom teacher, every Sunday night, about I'm gonna say about 5 o'clock. I'm
Hmm.
like, all right, it's 5 o'clock. I'm gonna plan for the whole week.
Hmm.
I'm gonna stay here until about, I don't know, five, six,
Hmm.
seven,
Hmm.
maybe even eight.
Yep.
And I'm planning and I'm making, I'm like, okay, this PDF is good right here. I'm gonna
Hmm.
download this PDF. I need to create this thing right here. Okay, I got this. I'm all ready. I got all my copies ready so that when I
Hmm.
go in there before everybody else, because I need to get there before everybody else, I have to make copies. And
Or the
this was
copy
back when there was
breaks
more
down.
paper. Yeah, right. This was back before everybody used a computer, but I
Yeah.
had to make copies first.
Yeah.
And you don't want to show up late because sometimes it's jammed and now you're screwed, right? Now you're screwed.
Hmm.
So that was my
Yeah.
Sunday, and I didn't
And as,
mind.
and as an admin, I personally have meetings after the school year ends. So the school year ends. We have, for us, we have
Right.
finals. There's a graduation, and it's like, okay, next week let's meet to like see what worked or didn't work this year.
Yeah.
Great. And then in the middle of summer, let's have another meeting so we're ready with the stuff we want to mail out to the parents,
Yeah.
in a couple of weeks. And then there's a meeting before school starts so
Yeah.
that we can be ready for the in-service training. So again, people that are not in the field don't fully understand that. They think, well, what do you mean? It's your summer vacation. Is it?
Mm, I mean,
It is
yeah,
to some degree,
yeah,
but yeah. So I don't know. Again, it goes back to there's a certain person, there's a certain personality. For me, I feel like I'm a nerd, right? And I love learning. I've always liked learning since I was a kid. So even for me in the summers, I read a book for my own development, learning knowledge of, whether it's social emotional, whether it's, how to, kids today versus, before the technology, how is it impacting them? I find
yeah,
something that I can take away from so that it serves me for the next school year, hopefully, right?
yeah,
Or that I can pass
absolutely.
on some knowledge to people. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, it's just a constant evolution because kids today are not the same kids that I was teaching necessarily. In some ways
no
they are,
way.
don't get me wrong, right? But they're not this, they don't learn the same, they don't process the same, they don't see
No.
the things in the same way that the kids I taught
Yeah,
20 years ago did.
yeah. You got kindergartners on iPads all day long in schools. That's what you got. You got kindergartners on iPads, and their lessons are on iPads, and they know how to get around it, and they know what they're doing, and that's what you got right now. Everybody has a device now, right? Everybody has a device. Everybody's connected. Um, and it's in that sense it's different, but and you got AI, right? And you got chat gbt, and you got all these little, there's not just chat gbt, but there's all these other things. I don't know if you guys have a firewall, if you allow it or not, but my district, there's a firewall, but then there's other ones that you'll find that you're like, okay, this one gets through the firewall, so I'll use
Mhm.
this one instead.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you got that going on right now. And in a private school, how bad is that right now with technology, telephones, chat GBT?
So, well, let's just the use of technology. Let's go with that. So, for our school, middle schoolers are not allowed to use their phones during the school day.
Oof,
I know,
oof,
unless
oof.
as as a Spanish teacher, as a teacher, right? If I'm playing, Kahoot or
Hmm.
Gimkit or anything that's an online, uh, you know, website for learning, I can say, okay, take out your phones. We're going to play Kahoot, right? That's
Yeah.
okay.
Wow.
But they are not allowed to be it. So some of my job is, taking phones and,
Yeah.
hey, collect it at, you can collect it at the end of the day, and we have our, consequences and all that
Hmm.
stuff. Um, and kids are very rarely do they argue, and I joke around with them a lot about like, I set it up real quick at the beginning of the year. Can you use your phones? No. What if your mom's texting you? No, exactly no. So
Yeah.
every now and then I get a kid going, it's because it was my mom, right? And I go, okay. can you use your phone? No. Okay, how, if it's your mom and you absolutely need to talk to her, because I get it, I understand. I had a mom once, right?
Mhm.
What could you do? Probably go to you and be like, Miss H, can I check my phone? Because my mom's probably texting me. Yeah, and I'm gonna be like, yeah, go ahead. So there's these ways to sort of allow them to check their phones because they don't know who's picking them up, or they don't know if they have practice, or whatever the conversation might be. They just have to sort of go about it the right way.
Yeah.
High school students at our school can only use their phones outside of a building, not inside of a building. So
Mhm.
theoretically, they shouldn't be walking around the hallways with their phones, scrolling TikTok or,
Yeah.
texting somebody. It's pretty good. It's not perfect, So
Yeah.
yes, other kids texting in the library or in the hallway, yeah, for sure. Are my kid, do my kids' phones get taken away because they're on their phones at lunch and they don't think I'm watching? Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
For sure. But that's the general rule. It used to be that they could use their middle school, at least, they could use their phones at the breaks, lunch, and what we call lab, which is recess. And we just found that they weren't interacting. Like, they're all sitting at a table with their friends, but they're just like,
Yeah.
you know, and maybe occasionally showing a funny video to each other, but then they would be back here.
Yeah.
We just changed the rule this year, and for the most part, again, it's not perfect, but they're actually interacting with each other. They have to talk. They're playing ping pong outside my office. They're chasing each other
Yeah.
around the trees. They're
Wow.
playing basketball outside, and they make these tournament games. So it's working out. Um, there's still a temptation. It still happens, but it works out okay.
I mean, you work at a high profile school though, like
Yeah.
and the video camera, like people wanting to take pictures of certain people and like is that's not an issue at all?
I think what's interesting. I think it's not a novelty to them in some
Okay.
ways. Do you know what I mean? My
Like
goddaughter
I've
goes to
I've seen that, been there, done
yeah,
that,
like
like yeah.
you know, yeah, my goddaughter goes to that school and she's been there since first grade, and it's not there. We have financial assistance for families of kids that deservedly should have this opportunity for an education, but maybe can't afford it, right? And so for us, it's it's a thing. It's a family dynamic. Okay, we paid the tuition for the month, but she needs new shoes. I got the shoes.
Yeah.
I'll go
Yeah.
take her shopping or whatever.
Mhm.
But she's been there since first grade, so it's like one of those things where they're just kind of like, I think because it's known, nobody, and the kids themselves aren't like oohing and eyeing over them,
Yeah.
right? So I
Yeah.
think that the kids that might feel like, don't do it, because it's almost like, okay, it's not really the cool thing to do. I'm not going to do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Inside they might be like, oh my God, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, they're pretty respectful about it. It's interesting actually. Now that you bring that up, I'm kind of in shock at how non-reactive they are to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's different.
hmm
Okay. Okay, so then Chat GBT.
So ChatGPT has become, obviously in education a thing. I think we're finding that, yeah, we're having some plagiarism situations with it. And so, again, depending on the age level, my middle schoolers, we would be more like, first of all, sometimes we have to start with, do you know what plagiarism is? Because sometimes I think we take it for granted that they know what that is. They know what cheating is.
Mhm.
And so when you say, do you know that you're cheating? They don't really see it as cheating, because for them, cheating is, I copied my friend's answers,
Yeah.
right? And so we have to almost explain, like, well, cheating is just you're taking someone else's work and this is not your work, right? And so starting at that point, now when they're in high school, they know better. And so then the consequences are different. They might receive, zeros on the assignment, or if it's their first offense, they might say redo it for some partial credit of
Yeah.
sorts. Um, but as teachers, I think we're finding that we have to find ways to assess our students where they're not doing some of these assignments at home. You know,
Mhm.
so for as a Spanish teacher, I would tend to have kids probably at the end of the year write a paragraph. My seventh graders get through some basic stuff, so they should be able to write a paragraph about someone, telling me their name, their age, where they're from, things they like, things they don't like. And so I would have to do that paragraph now at school, and even make sure they have their books, so that if they're stuck with words, they can look it up. Make sure they have any resources that might need handy.
Mhm.
and try to remind them like you can do this without this easy answer that you're
Yeah.
wanting to find, right? So it's a challenge, I think, for everybody right now to figure out how do we teach. Sometimes we might have to think about evolving the way we teach and our
Yes.
expectations. I'm currently finding that my younger students have a real hard time with homework. Like it's like optional in their minds.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know what happened, but they think it's like,
Yeah.
or they've honestly said to me, I forgot. And it's more than normal. It's more numbers than usual. Where I brought this up at our last department meeting, and I said, is anybody having this issue? Because I'm feeling like I need to start thinking about what does homework mean? What is the point of it? And can I do some of that at school? Because it's one of those where they're stressing out because now they're missing assignments or losing points on assignments, and I'm getting frustrated because it's not coming in. So like
Mhm.
it's a lose-lose in that site, and I don't want to
Yeah.
say obviously there's benefit to homework and it's not every kid, but maybe there's a way to handle things differently. So I think we're at a point, interestingly, where in education there's going to be a shift in things. What that shift is, I don't know. But I
Yeah.
think there's going to be a shift in things. And I think we definitely started noticing this, after COVID, right? I'm not
Yes.
blaming COVID. I just
Mm,
think that things happened during COVID that
yeah.
created differences.
And everybody,
Mhm.
right? Because during COVID, I was a dean during COVID, and it was like I wasn't really even doing anything. They would ask me to pop into different Zoom meetings, and if somebody had a profile picture that was inappropriate, they'd ask me to go in there and say, "Hey, you need to go ahead," and it was through a chat. So like, "Hey, take down that picture and change it." It
Or
wasn't
I've done
really
that.
anything. Yeah, it was like, and so I'd wake up, I'd check in, and there'd be like a good morning. I'd check in, and then after that, like I'm just waiting. So I'd walk my dog, I'd drink some coffee, I'd go outside. It was beautiful. I'd go for a run. It was beautiful, right?
Your
Just
COVID, I gotta tell you, your COVID experience is very different from my COVID experience.
oh, see, you were in the class, you were a teacher or whatever, right? Yeah, so that was different. For me, I was just popping in for discipline, and so I loved it. I loved, just and it was quiet outside, and I was like, this is a great experience.
Nobody was
Why do we
Mr.
even have to
Vergara,
work?
Mr. Vergara.
Yeah, it was like, why do we even have to work? Why, so that, and I'm thinking like with the kids too, like it was like, okay, I'm at home, I'm here, I'll do a little assignment, then I could turn off my camera, I could be over here on this side, I could be playing video games at the same time when, I'm supposed to be in this classroom. And so that changed everybody. That just changed everybody. And so we're back in school, we're back at work, and you question, you're like, well, why? Like,
Why does
why
it
do
have
I
to
have to?
be this way when it
Yeah.
was that way and it worked just fine?
Yeah, yeah, like, why do I gotta do that? Why do I have to do what? Homework, like, what all this classwork, and then if you do give homework, right, you go home, I have ChatGPT. I have all Google. I could do this, like, I could get this done like that if I
Mhm,
wanted to.
mhm.
So, I don't know, it's a big question,
Yeah, yeah,
like,
and
when
it's like I sometimes want like think about like I feel like sometimes we're teaching how we were taught. I'm guessing we're about the same age
Mhm.
range.
I'm 46.
I'm 47, so perfect, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and so I feel like sometimes we're teaching how we were taught, which by the way was we were taught how like generations before us were taught. You
Mhm.
memorize,
Right.
you spit out this information,
Regurgitate.
you
Yeah.
regurgitate the dates, there's some critical thinking, don't get me wrong, like, how did this character affect this character kind of vibes, but for the most part, like there's a lot of repeating,
Mhm.
memorizing. Um these kids don't have to do that.
Yeah.
They don't. And that's the
Mm-mm.
reality. Like sometimes I don't want to say I've had arguments, but I've had discussions, very passionate discussions with people who, well, they should know that in 1776 this happened. Okay,
Why?
they don't need to. They can literally go, "Hey Siri,"
Google
right?
that. Yeah, exactly. Hey
And so
Siri, exactly.
I'm not saying that that bit of information isn't important to historical context and civilization per se, but like they don't really need to recall that. And so,
Yeah.
what are we arguing? That they're not memorizing? Is that really our argument?
Eh,
And I'm not, by the way, I'm not saying it should or shouldn't be. it's just a question that I have now
Yeah,
because we had to memorize. Because if we didn't memorize, we had to go to a library, open a book,
that's right.
read the book.
Encyclopedias.
Mhm.
Encyclopedias. I had a set of encyclopedias in my house. We bought like
Mhm.
a set, A through Z.
Mhm.
And then after a while, they're outdated. These
Mhm.
are outdated books sitting right here, and we didn't really even use it after a while. Like,
Yeah.
okay, they're here.
So,
But like,
it's just the questions, just
yeah,
questions I ask myself pretty frequently.
yeah, and learning is so quick. And I'll give you an example, like this podcast. It was like, okay, I want to create a podcast. Let me go through a TikTok. Let me watch a YouTube video. Oh, that's what they use. Oh, that's the camera they have. Oh, that's how they did that. Okay, let me do that thing. Oh, okay. I use Riverside Recording. Cool. I'm gonna go ahead and do that. I need a calendar invite. Okay, let me do that. And it was all TikTok, YouTube. Watch a couple videos, put it together. Okay, I got all of this learning in like I don't know, like a week or so. Like I put to just small, and it's small little bites. Like, oh, let me watch a quick video.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. And once you
and that's
practice it, you're going to modify it,
that's right.
mold it to what you need and what works for you.
Yeah, I'll give you another example. Like I was thinking about having this raw food diet, like or just like just eat raw food.
Yeah, I
And
got
so
you.
I'm sitting during my lunch break. Raw food diet. Let me watch a video. What does it look like? Oh, okay, this is what they eat. I could
Mm-hmm.
do that. And like that's a plan right there.
Mm-hmm.
And I had all of this knowledge in like 15 minutes. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I could do that. But
Mm-hmm.
me and you, if we wanted to look up how to make podcast, I don't even know. There's no podcast back then, but like we had to read a book.
Yeah.
It was hard. It was
Yeah.
like we had to go somewhere, go to the library, like you said, read a book, and
Mm-hmm.
it took a long time, and it wasn't quick.
Yeah.
So things are different.
Things are
Things are
different.
definitely different.
We just have to, and I'm a full believer that we have to ask ourselves questions. I am not the same teacher or person, probably, definitely,
No.
that I was 20 years ago. At my core, am I the same? Sure. There's some core things about me that are going to always be who I am, but how I teach, how I interact with people, how I express myself, my reactivity. I mean,
Mhm.
God knows my reactivity from when I was a middle schooler to now is night and day,
Yeah.
right? So I'm a firm believer that we have to evolve. We have to ask questions. If you're still teaching the same way and you're still handling kids the same way you've handled them for a while, like your entire career, if you're 10 plus years in a field, I don't know. Yeah, I think you have to ask yourself some questions. Some things work, keep it, and some things need to
Mhm.
change. Yeah, it's
Yeah. When
just
I
the
when I
thing.
was when I was in the classroom, my whole goal was to just teach social emotional learning.
Mhm,
That was it. I'm gonna teach you how to be respectful. I'm gonna teach you how to be responsible, how to be trustworthy,
mhm,
right? I'm gonna teach you how to be a hard worker, how to have a strong mind, and I'm gonna teach you all these things through an assignment. I'm gonna
mhm,
teach you through assignment. That's what I'm gonna do. So we have this little project right here. You're gonna go ahead and form groups. You're gonna have to communicate with somebody, right? You're gonna have to, be a hard worker. You have to have a strong mind because you might think that you're not gonna be able to do it. So you're gonna have to have a strong mind to be able to push through. You have to have
mhm,
perseverance and
mhm,
like all these traits. I would teach kids, and I'd point it out through an assignment. That's what I would do, and for me, it wasn't really even about the academics. It
mhm.
wasn't. I'm teaching the academics, yeah, and you're gonna get smarter, definitely. But I'm really pointing out the fact that this assignment right here, we're really learning about character development. We're learning about social emotional learning, right?
Mhm,
How do you interact with this person right here?
mhm,
How do you build a relationship with this person right here? Right?
mhm.
Because that's extremely important. Because if you don't know how to build relationships with people, that when you're an adult and you're working with people, you're gonna have a difficult time. It's
Yeah,
gonna be hard for you. So
yeah,
let's learn that now.
yeah.
And that's
I
what that's
always
what I
tell,
did.
I always tell kids when they come in and they're having issues with, I don't know, sometimes it's a teacher, sometimes it's a peer. And I'm like, do you really think I like everybody I work with?
Yeah.
Like, no,
No.
not, I said, but we have to be adults, right? And I'm not going to be disrespectful to someone. Doesn't mean I'm going to go hang out with them after school, but it's like, hey, good morning. How are you? How you doing? Right? You have to. And so I think role modeling is also super important, right? Because I remember being a kid and I would always wait, but you're telling me to do this, but you're doing that.
Yeah.
Right? And that made a bigger impact sometimes than the words, right? So, you know, kids see us, they look to us, they're trying to gauge, where am I going to land? Who am I going to be? How do I
Mm,
want to be? And they'll put on personas. Like I've seen kids, middle school in particular, like they start one way and they end up another a lot of times. And so, they try on different identities and personalities and who they are. And
yeah,
we are part of that buffet for them. So it's really important to role model.
yeah,
We have a dress code, and, no ripped jeans, for instance. They can wear Crocs, but they have to be in sports mode kind of vibe. And so, for me, I'm not going to wear ripped jeans, because if I'm going to dress code them for being in ripped jeans, how dare I when I have my
hmm
ripped jeans? It's just, I think role modeling is important.
yeah.
It's super,
You know,
super important.
absolutely. Like, how do you? So on TikTok, right? You always see these teachers, and they're excited about this. They're really excited about this. That they're leaving the profession, like they're leaving the profession, and they're excited about it, and they're almost like happy that they're leaving, and kind of making fun of everybody else who stays in the profession, right? That's kind of what they do. Um, you being in education for 24 years, how do you avoid teacher burnout? I know we all go through, I know we all go through it. I know it could be
Yeah.
difficult for all of us,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you're still here. You're
Yeah.
still here.
Yeah.
How do you avoid that burnout?
I think for me, ear early on in my career, I don't know, I'm trying to think if I saw it from someone or if I just decided on my own. And I really could not tell you, but at some point I said, home is home, work is work, right?
Mhm.
I also will acknowledge that I probably had the benefit that other people didn't, in that I didn't have a family to raise, right? And so for me, that meant I could be at work till 5 or 6, wrapping up
Yeah.
my grading, and staying late for the basketball game kind of
Mhm.
thing, and not feel, I think, for people that have families, the pressure of getting home,
Yeah.
making dinner, connecting with the family, right?
Mhm.
So for me, that, and I was probably in my 20s, late 20s at that point, early 30s, that worked out, right?
Yeah.
I decided home is home, work is work. And so anything I did at work was work. And when my time was up, whatever time that could have been, it could have been 4, could have been 4:30, could have been 5. Then I packed up my bag and I went home, and home was home. I just relaxed. You know, hung out with my friends. I went to saw my goddaughter, because she was pretty close by at that point. We probably lived together with
Yeah.
her parents. But I still live that. I live with my partner, and I love my family life. But
Mhm.
whether now I get home earlier than, when I was single, and it's still home is home, school is school. And I
Yeah.
think having listen, is it perfect? No. Sometimes I do have to hey, I have to grade these papers. Sorry.
Yeah.
Or I do have to respond to this email as an admin. It's not an option at 7 p.m. sometimes,
Mhm.
right? But for the most part, the phone's away in terms of work, and I bring the bag, doesn't mean it gets opened, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think that's number one, is I think I have friends who have left the profession. They were in a public school setting, and I
Yeah.
think it also depends on where you work, right?
Yeah.
If you're not feeling supported, if you're not feeling heard or validated in whatever struggles are happening with you, um, I can see where people would feel a little bit frustrated,
Yeah.
and eventually, right, it builds up. Eventually, they would bounce. But I think it's also finding your tribe, right? Just finding your people. I have a friend at work. She's, my bestie at work, and I know I can go into her office and just no
Mhm.
judgment, just let it out, and then it's like, oh, okay, I feel lighter. Just feel lighter already. Thank
Yeah.
you. And then we laugh about some silliness and we move on.
Yeah.
Same thing, if she comes over to me, she'll just vent it out. So I think finding your people, finding your tribe is really important too. If you feel alone, I can understand where people would just be, I'm out.
Yeah.
I don't fault people for leaving. I think it's like any other job. I mean, I know people that have left the business world because it was just too stressful, or
Yeah.
taxing on them. Um, I think it's the same for teaching. Again, because the other thing is a lot of us are fixers or givers, and we just give and give and give and give, and we forget to put back into our own. And I think in some cases, sometimes that's also an issue. Is like you haven't taken the time to refill your bowl, and now you're way beyond empty. You're
Yeah.
way beyond empty. You know.
Yeah. That's tough. That's a tough one. I just saw a video just recently before this podcast. I was
Mhm.
just scrolling through TikTok and I saw a video and this lady was packing up all of her stuff and I was like, man, that's rough. I wish like I don't know what the answer is. It's sad for me to see all these educators just leave,
Mhm.
It's just sad. Um, I'm still in the game after I don't know how
Mhm.
many years. It's been a long time.
Mhm.
And for me, it's like my life outside of teaching or being an assistant principal is so important. Like
Mhm.
my time outside of, being an educator, right? My
Right.
morning workouts, my morning runs, my diet, the amount of sleep I get.
Yeah.
After whatever I get home, it's like four-ish o'clock.
Mhm.
Whatever I do after that, I schedule it. I decide what I do.
Yeah.
I'm doing these things, and um, keeping that sacred is so important. What I do on weekends, that's my business, and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
I think that that's important. And when I was a classroom teacher, for me, I don't need a lot of support. So maybe I never like to ask for help. Let me just say that. Maybe I didn't like to ask
There's
for help.
also that. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
And so when I was in the classroom, I enjoyed just closing the door and it was just me and the kids and
Mhm.
that's it. And if I could
Mhm.
control this environment, then we're good.
Mhm.
Like everything else outside these doors doesn't really affect us because we're good right here in this
Mhm.
classroom. So that helped me with just not burning out. And building relationships is huge. Building
Mhm.
relationships with students, especially students with difficult behavior, is huge, right?
Yeah.
I always felt that, everybody needs your attention, right? Everybody needs your attention, but there's some students need your attention just a little bit more, right? Some students will just need you to be polite and kind and say
Mhm.
good morning, teach the lesson, because they have a strong support system.
Mhm.
They go home to family and
They're
they're
fine.
good. Yeah, there's
Mhm.
no problem. But there are some that need extra. And those are the ones that you need to build
Mhm.
relationships with and teach them things because they probably weren't taught certain things
Mhm.
at home, like
Yeah.
good
Or they
character.
don't have, or at least they may not feel, legitimately or not, that they have someone at home
That's
that they
right.
can turn to and
That's
talk
right.
to. Or, I think sometimes we as adults forget that kids are people, they're little humans,
Mhm.
and they're dealing with things that we may not even be aware of because they're not sharing that with us. I
Yeah.
know, again, thinking of my childhood, I had I guess I'll say I had a rough one. I don't think I ever labeled it as such. But as an
Mhm.
adult, yeah, I had a rough childhood and nobody would have known at school because
Yeah.
I was happiest at school. I was smiling, I was laughing, and I was a little bit of a class clown, but I was also a teacher's pet and I got good grades.
Mhm.
And, I did my homework, anything to get the validation, right?
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
now as an adult looking back, well, I was doing all that because that's where I got my reward
Mhm.
because I wasn't
Mhm.
getting it at home. And
Yeah.
nobody would have known. So I can't assume always either that a kid that's happy and smiley and getting straight A's is having that easy life at home either. And I also know that the kid that's struggling, behavior wise, usually not, yes, grades can be an impact, but the kid that's, you know, constantly getting sent to me or talking back to the teacher, or there's a disconnect in all the other classes, I've had to sit down and go, what's the deal, man?
Mhm.
What's going on? What's
Yeah.
really the problem here?
Yeah.
And yeah, they're little humans that are dealing with things. And I think we forget that sometimes and we want them to fit this box we have. This is what my student should be. And the ones that don't
That's
fit the box, people have a real hard time with.
that's right. And I feel like the ones that don't fit the box are the ones that need the most love. They need the most love and they need, they need attention, they need love. And, people a lot of educators don't want to do that because sometimes they feel as though, they're ruining my day, then you know what? This person deserves some sort of consequence.
Yeah.
so they could learn. They
Mhm.
could learn, and they might be going through a mess that we don't know about. And
Mhm.
we just don't know about because kids
Mhm.
just, in my opinion, they just don't act up all of a sudden. They're going through something.
Mhm.
They're going through something, in my opinion.
Nobody usually teaches kids how to express themselves when it comes to those things, right? So
Nope.
like they just act out. They disrupt sometimes. Sometimes they're
Mhm.
very quiet. I mean, you get a whole array of that, right? And so no
Yeah.
one's taught kids, and I try my best to be like, this would have been a lot easier had you just said.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you don't have to go into too much detail, but just like, I'm having a really rough day. I'm
Yeah.
having a really rough day today. I'm sorry. Just that might have
Yeah.
helped 90% of the time. But no one
Absolutely.
teaches them that. And when you have this power struggle, because that's what it
Yeah.
becomes this power struggle between the adult and the child. The adult usually has a harder time understanding why they're maybe wrong in handling it the way they did.
Yes.
You mean the adult? They should do what I
Yes.
tell them to do. And growing up how I grew up, I don't necessarily fall to that subscription automatically, by the way. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that they're not necessarily right, but not always. And
Mhm.
I think sometimes people have a hard time hearing, kind of, we're wrong on this.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. That's interesting. So we're coming toward the end right here. I always end my podcast with 3 tips that you could give to future educators. So, any 3 tips you give to future educators that might watch this podcast are like, you know what, I could learn something from Jenny Hernandez right here.
Well, I think number one, you're gonna if you're a young teacher, you're gonna want to go all in. Like, let me just jump completely in and
Mm,
commit and give it all, and I volunteer and I'm gonna do that. That's great. I think I was like that in my 20s, but again, realizing you do need a work-life balance. Like,
yeah,
work, your career, your profession, your job should not be totally what defines you, right? If
yeah,
you've done an identity wheel, it should
yeah,
not be more than half of that.
right.
So finding a good work-life balance where you are a teacher, but you also are other things, and that you
Mhm.
allow time for you to be a friend, a partner, a daughter, a non-teacher on your own. Let me just binge
Right.
watch whatever I want to binge watch, right?
Yeah.
And not feel, and but number two, don't feel guilty about it. Because I think that, again, because of the type of person that goes into this, we start feeling guilt and shame because we didn't do more, or because we weren't ready for, maybe I had every intention of planning on Sunday, but instead, I get a random call, let's go hang out, sounds good, and I take off and I don't plan Sunday. It's all
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
By the way, the more you teach, the less you have to plan on Sunday. The
Right.
more you can
That's
just
that's correct.
totally get in there and wing
That's
it.
correct.
And then I think the third thing is, we love what we do. I I don't think we would be doing this if we didn't. But to remind yourself that when things don't go right, or if a kid acts out, or even if a supervisor, or a colleague snaps at you, it's not personal. I mean, very rarely is it personal.
Yeah.
And so I think if you can find your work balance, if you can let go of shame and guilt, and you can remind yourself it's not personal, it's not about me, probably
Hmm. Hmm.
99% of the time, you're going to be all right. You're going to be all
That's good.
right.
That's good stuff. Well,
Yeah.
Jenny, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Really enjoyed you coming on.
Love,
Really
love following
appreciate
you. Yeah.
it. Thank you so much.